Section 5.8, Solving Equations by Factoring. So first off, if we have two numbers that multiply to 0, then we know that either this first number is 0 or the second number has to be 0. In order for a product to equal 0, we know that one of the two things getting multiplied has to be 0. Using this idea, if we have two binomials getting multiplied and their product is 0, well then we know either this first binomial is 0 or this second one is 0. And then we can just solve each of these, add 5. And we can just check this by substituting it in and making sure it works. Well, 5 minus 5 is 0. This is 11. 0 times 11 is 0. So we're good. Checking this one. Both of them work. So here's our answer. So same idea here, but notice now we don't have it factored, so that is the first thing we need to do. Notice we can factor a 4p from both, and we're left with p minus 3. Well then now either this 4p is 0, or the p minus 3 is 0. So if we use 0 or 3, our equation is solved. This one, notice there's no common GCF, but we can factor this. It's a difference of squares. So now either this first one is 0 or the second one is 0. And there's our solutions. This one, note, I know a lot of you don't like dealing with fractions. So if we don't want to deal with fractions, we can multiply both sides by 7, and we won't worry about it anymore. Notice this 7 and this 7 will cancel. And then these 7s will as well. And now also notice we don't have it equal to 0 yet. So we do need to have our equation equal to 0. Alright, so now we've got no fractions and we have it equal to 0. So let's factor this. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 18 and add to negative 7. So then either 2x minus 3 equals 0 or 3x plus 1 equals 0. So our solutions are 3/2 or negative 1/3. Alright, now this one looks a little more complicated, but let's start by just factoring it and seeing what we can do. Notice they have a common factor of x, so let's factor that out. And now let's see if we can find two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to 13. So now we've got 3 terms, but it works the same way. So either x is 0, or x plus 3 equals 0, or 5x minus 2 equals 0. So this one's already solved. This one, x will be negative 3. This one will have 5x equals 2, x equals 2 fifths. So if you wanted to rewrite this, you could write it as x equals 0, negative 3, or 2 fifths. If you wanted to write them all together, that's fine. If you wanted to have them broken up, that's fine. Once again, notice we don't have it equal to 0, so let's add our 36 over. Okay, so we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to 36 and add to negative 13. Now notice we can factor each of these again because they're a difference of squares. So this time you'll have 4 answers. Alright, now this one's a little bit different. So we have the formula for a height of object that's thrown or shot up into the air. And we want to know if there's an initial velocity of 208 feet per second, when will the object hit the ground? So first off, instead of a v, we can have our 208. And now let's think about this. What is our height going to be when we hit the ground? Well, when we hit the ground, our height is 0. So we can use 0 for our height. And now we just need to factor it. We can factor out a 16t. We're left with 13 minus t. So this happens when time is either 0 or 13. 0 is when we first shot it up. So that's not going to work. So our answer is after 13 seconds. This one's the same idea, except this time our initial velocity is 128. But now we want to know what the time is when we're 192 feet above the ground. So this means when our height is 192, or when our height over here is 192. Now, notice we want it equal to 0, but we also would like to have this t squared term positive. So let's go ahead and actually move all of this to the left. We can factor out a 16. And now we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to 12 and add to negative 8. So this 16 can't equal 0, so we don't need to worry about it. So this will happen either after 6 seconds, and it'll happen after 2 seconds. Because keep in mind, this one will happen on the way up, and this one will then be on the way down. So it will hit that height twice. Once while it's heading up into the air, and once when it's on its way back down. And so this is section 5-8.